Weather on the Hour is brought to you by Teplic Laser Surgery Centers. Your vision for the future.
From ABC News in Washington. This week with Sam Donaldson and Cokie Roberts, featuring George Will, and our roundtable with George Stephanopoulos and Bill Kristol.
This week, flare-ups around the world. 6-year-old Cuban Elian Gonzalez caught in a diplomatic crossfire between Cuba and the United States. His father demands his return, but President Clinton wants the law to decide.
What would be best for the child? And there is a legal process for determining that.
And on the other side of the world, Russia threatens to annihilate the capital of Chechnya, and Yeltsin bluntly reminds the U.S. of his country's nuclear supplies. How will the U.S. resolve these global conflicts? We'll ask National Security Advisor Samuel Berger.
And this week, doubts grow in the Republican Party about candidate Bush's intellect and experience.
And frankly, I really believe that you need more experience before you become President of the United States. That's why I'm thinking of you as a vice presidential candidate.
As the Republican rivals head into another debate, will Bush's lead shrink? We'll talk to candidates Orrin Hatch, Gary Bauer, and Alan Keyes.
Cuba versus U.S., Yeltsin's tough talk, Bush's image problem. All here this Sunday morning.
Welcome to our program. Yes, indeed, we have lots of politics as usual, but for the first time in several weeks, foreign policy is the dominant theme this weekend. There's that dangerous situation as Russia continues to threaten to storm the capital of Chechnya, and of course, that little boy, Elian Gonzalez from Cuba, is in everybody's mind and hearts, Cokie.
That's right, Sam, and we'll be talking about all of that with our National Security Advisor, Samuel Berger, shortly. But first, let's get some reports from the field. In Havana is Morton Dean from ABC News. Mort, what's going on there today?
Well, Cokie, officials here continue to tell us that neither the Cuban Foreign Ministry nor the boy's father has responded positively or negatively to the U.S. requirement that the father be interviewed by a U.S. official here, that the father prove his parenthood and prove that he has exercised some degree of parental responsibility since his divorce from the boy's mother, who drowned during that voyage to Florida. Despite the world headlines that this case has generated, many aspects of the U.S.-Cuban relationship continue unhindered. A boys' baseball team from Florida has been playing here. The U.S. Coast Guard returned a Cuban vessel that the government here said had been hijacked earlier in the week. Even the alleged hijackers were returned to Cuba, and those charter flights to and from the United States are continuing on a daily basis. Sam?
Thanks, Mort. The real danger this weekend appears to be in Russia and Chechnya, where Moscow is threatening once again to storm the Chechnyan capital. For the latest, let's go to our man in Moscow, Clay Scott. Clay, what's up?
Sam, the immediate concern, of course, is for the safety of Chechen civilians still trapped in their capital city, Grozny. Russia has offered safe passage out of the city. It says it has established 2 corridors through which civilians wishing to escape can do so. However, there is very little indication at this point that anyone has taken Russia up on their offer. That is partly because perhaps they have not heard of the corridor. Communications, of course, are down in Grozny. Also, we can assume that anyone left in Grozny is simply too terrified to leave their homes. Their city has been under merciless bombardment for the last several weeks, and Russia has shown no indication that they are about to stop that offensive in Chechnya and on Grozny, despite the Western criticism, which has increased lately. In fact, if anything, it seems that that Western criticism has only added fuel to the fire. Last week in Beijing, President Yeltsin said in no uncertain terms, he said, Russia, it will not be dictated to. He said, we are still a nuclear power. And as if to underscore that point, indeed, on Friday, Russia deployed 10 new nuclear missiles. Cokie?
Thanks very much, Clay. Thanks for being with us this morning. Now joining us, Samuel Berger, the National Security Advisor.
Good morning.
Welcome. And joining the question, as always, George Will. Let's pick up where Clay left off. Yeltsin talking about a full arsenal of nuclear weapons, deploying some. Is this a really serious, dangerous situation for the West and the world?
Well, he's reacting. Obviously, we have taken a very strong position with respect to what's going on in Chechnya. We believe it is a mistake for Russia. It's going to cost them dearly in terms of diverted resources in terms of radicalizing the Chechens, and we've said that very firmly and clearly, both privately and publicly. I think that President Yeltsin's comments were less a threat than an assertion that Russia remains a great power and it's going to make its own decisions. Right after Yeltsin made those comments, Prime Minister Putin very quickly came out and said he did not see a souring of U.S.-Russian relations. We strongly disagree with the Russians on this, but I don't believe that those statements from President Yeltsin, who often talks in very bold and dramatic fashion, represent a particular threat. I think the real issue is whether or not the Russians will see a better course here and seek a political solution.
Does our strong disagreement include economic sanctions?
Well, we have to do what we believe is in our national interest here. We give aid to Russia in two ways. One, in terms of our own aid. About 2/3 of it goes to help destroy Russian nuclear weapons, to help control nuclear material. I think it would be a mistake for us to not continue that. That's in our interest. Most of the rest of the money does not go to Moscow. It goes to local democracy projects, NGOs, independent radio and television, trying to build up democracy in Russia. Again, I don't think that's in our interest. I think it would be counterproductive for us to cut that off, but I think we have to maintain the pressure on Russia. I think the international community is speaking here with one voice, and I think there are some signs that perhaps it's having some impact. The Russians have backed away from their ultimatum, at least temporarily, against Grozny. The OSCE representative, Mr. Volobak, is going to Chechnya on Tuesday. And Prime Minister Putin indicated this week that he has engaged in now discussions with the President of Chechnya, Mr. Mashkadov, or his representatives. Let's hope that the Russians get the message before they get themselves thoroughly bogged down in a totally counterproductive and destructive engagement.
But when the President says there will be a very heavy price to pay unless Moscow amends its policy, does he mean more than disapproval?
Well, I think, George, that the Russians are already paying a price, and they'll pay a heavier price. They're paying a price in terms of getting bogged down in a conflict in Chechnya that they can't win militarily. They're paying a price in terms of the resources that are being diverted from desperately needed domestic programs. They're paying a price in terms of radicalizing the Chechnyan population, which is only going to come back then.
Those are all internal prices.
Those are internal, and they're paying a price in terms of isolating themselves from the international community.
You said that we've taken a very strong stand. This is what the President said a few years ago. He said, I would remind you that we once had a civil war in our country for the principle that no state has a right to withdraw from our union, and so the United States has taken the position that Chechnya is part of Russia.
Well, he wasn't then, back in the early 90s, or now, in any way comparing the two situations.
He certainly was.
Well, we have to read the whole context here, George, but my point is this. Certainly Russia has a right to defend its territorial integrity. Russia has a right to go after terrorists in Chechnya, of which there are large groups. Russia has a right to try to put down an insurrection in which the Chechens initially attacked Dagestan, but they don't have a right to use indiscriminate force, which is killing civilians in a way that is both wrong and ultimately counterproductive.
With regard to the Cuban boy, we know what his mother wanted. She died trying to get him to freedom. The President says we will do what is in the best interest of the child, and there are legal processes to decide what that is. How can it be in the best interest of that child to grow up under communist tyranny?
Well, you know, George, the thing that we most object to with respect to Cuba is they do not have a system that respects the rule of law. That's our fundamental disagreement with Cuba. They don't have democracy and the rule of law. So let us follow the rule of law as we deal with this tragic case. This boy should not be a political football. He should not be a political pawn. There is a legal process in which will determine who speaks for this boy. Does the father speak for the boy? The father has some rights too. Does he not speak for the boy? Does the family in the United States? But I think we ought to keep this out. Either have, I would say, for Castro, this is not about politics. Don't try to intimidate us. And I would say for the folks in the United States who want to make this a cause as opposed to a compassionate way of dealing with a child who's watched his mother die and is now in the United States. Let's deal with this according to the rule of law.
But given that the father lives in Cuba, has friends and relatives in Cuba, under a police state, how can he possibly, in any context or any venue, speak without coercion?
Well, we have to. Our folks in Havana, our intersection there is seeking to talk to the father, alone, and they'll have to make some judgment. A, as to whether or not they get the access to the father. B, whether or not they believe that the father is talking in a way that is expressing his own desire and will, or whether or not he's being coerced. Well, those are the judgments that have to be made. My only point is, let's make these judgments based upon all the factors, including the fact that what we hear from the father has to be taken in the context of the environment in which he speaks.
Vice President Gore says the father should be given a visa to come to this country to discuss all of this. Does the president agree?
Well, that is something that we have raised with the Cubans.
What do they say?
So far, they have not permitted that. But I think the next step here is to talk to the father, to see whether we have ability to discern his views, his desires, and his relationship with the boy in a way taking into account George's point that is not coerced.
The president might give a visa then.
Well, obviously that also depends upon the Cuban government permitting him to do.
Quick question back on Chechnya, and then I want to go to another subject. There was a halt in the bombing by Russia till midnight today. Has the president asked that be extended?
Well, we would certainly like to see it extended. I think that, and there has not been a subsequent ultimatum as far as I know. They said they were going to take this action yesterday. They didn't. They pulled back. But a ceasefire here is not the solution. Wait for a week and then resume where they are. The solution here is, in our judgment, for the Russian government to engage in a political dialogue with leaders in Chechnya, not with the terrorists in Chechnya, but with leaders in Chechnya that can speak for the Chechnyan people and enter into some sort of political arrangement.
The Deputy Prime Minister of Russia suggests that maybe it won't be an all-out assault on the capital by the full military, but by paramilitary commandos. Would that be more palatable to the West?
Hardly. I mean, I think that we don't want to see any more indiscriminate violence against civilians. So far, what we've seen is excessive force used by the Russians, an objective that perhaps we can accept, but not a strategy that makes sense.
I've spent too much time on this subject, but I want to get to another one. The president says his gaze in the military policy, don't ask, don't tell, is out of whack, but he agreed to it. What's wrong?
Well, he said what a Defense Department study said last year, and what Secretary Cohn also concluded, and that is the policy has not been implemented evenly. It's not been implemented as it was intended. Sometimes it has become a vehicle for harassment.
What is the president blaming military leaders?
A few months ago, Secretary Cohn ordered new rules for applying this policy. They're just being put into effect by the services, and I think we need to see how those play out, so that the intent here, which was not harassment, but allowing gays to serve so long as they did not, so long in a way that the military felt was not inconsistent with good order and discipline,
Mr. Berger,
would be effectuated.
The president seems to be blaming military leaders, saying the policy might have been all right, but you didn't carry it out properly.
The president is saying nothing different. There have been a number of incidents, as you know.
Who's he blaming for its failure?
Can I answer?
Certainly, of course, sir.
The president is saying nothing different than an internal Defense Department review last year, and Secretary Cohn, who has said that this policy has not been always implemented in an even way across all units, and sometimes has been implemented in a way that really has been counter to its intention. He has issued new rules and regulations to bring it back in line with its original intent. Let's see how that happens.
Mr. Berger, we're out of time, so we haven't been able to ask you about Winho Lee, Iraq, a whole lot of things. But can I just quickly ask you, the terrorism report that came out yesterday from the State Department warning Americans around the world for the holidays that there could be incidents. How seriously should everyone be taking that?
Well, we have received credible information, Koki, that there is planning for terrorist actions around the new year abroad. Americans are among the targets. It is not specific with respect to location, but we felt obligated to let Americans know that. I think that Americans should be traveling abroad, should be careful. I think they should check with the local embassy or the local consulate where they're going to determine if there are particular places they should stay away from.
The Middle East?
This is not just in the Middle East, but in any location. So I think there's a caution sign up, but not a stop sign.
Thank you. Thanks so much for being with us, and you have a happy holiday.
Thank you, you too.
When we come back, presidential politics. The Republicans head to another debate on Monday. Is candidate Bush no longer invincible? We'll ask 3 of his rivals.
From ABC News, This Week with Sam Donaldson and Koki Roberts. Brought to you by Merrill Lynch. There's a new way to work with Merrill Lynch, any way you want. And by GE. From plastics to financial services, we bring good things to life.
So what will happen to all this now that you're going virtual?
We're not going virtual.
I read you're getting into internet trading, online cash management.
Well, we are, yes.
The end of an era.
Not at all. Online trading and the rest of it are simply new tools we're making available.
You don't have to sugarcoat it for me, but I must tell you, I'm going to miss our little chats.
Nelson, I'm not going away. The office isn't going away.
The coffee? The ticker?
Not going away.
What about the little bull?
Not going away.
Good.
Hurry, we'll miss kickoff.
Wait! Want a quick bite? Fruit, chips, roast Cornish game ham with baked potatoes, T-bone steak, clams on the half shell.
Huh?
Introducing a whole new way to cook, the Advantium oven from GE. It uses the power of light to cook in a fraction of the time. Food that used to take over an hour now takes 15 minutes. Baked potatoes, 10. And unlike with microwave ovens, it's crispy and juicy. The new Advantium from GE.
I think we're a little early.
Cooking at the speed of life.
3 years ago, my IT guys told me there'd be 2 kinds of businesses. Those with a vision to master the internet, and those without. And we didn't want to be the second kind. Then Dell came to see us. They showed us how to use the internet for direct relationships with our customers, suppliers, everyone who's a part of our business. With Dell's support, there's no limit to where I can take this company. We always knew we needed the internet. We just didn't know how badly. Be direct. Dell.
Dell servers use Intel Pentium 3 processors.
Joining us now from Des Moines, Iowa, presidential candidate and Senator Orrin Hatch. Welcome, Senator.
Nice to be with you.
That subdued tie you have on.
Thank you very much, Sam. Coming from you, that's a great compliment.
Well, Senator, you've been the toughest of all the people on those stages and those debates with your fellow Republicans on George W. Bush, saying he's inexperienced, saying almost that he's not qualified to be president. What happened to Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment, speak no ill of another Republican?
Well, I always thought you were able to joke and laugh a little bit. I was making a point that, you know, I have experience that money can't buy, more than any presidential candidate running this year. And I was kind of pointing that out, but I did it in a humorous way, and I think people are concerned. I think that the humor that I used kind of pointed out what was on everybody's minds. Really, does George W. Bush have enough experience to really walk into the White House and be effective on day one? I don't think anybody doubts that I have that experience.
Well, you don't think he has the experience?
Well, I don't think he does. I don't think that hardly any of them do.
Well,
look, the ones who have the experience in this matter are Gore, Bradley, McCain, and myself, and I have more than any of them. You know, John McCain's had 16, 17 years experience. I've had 23 years experience, but not only in Washington and passing countless pieces of landmark legislation, but bringing people together, getting people to work together. I'm the only one who has the proven record of being able to do that who's running for president.
But, Senator, don't you worry that if Bush does get the nomination of your party, your face will be on all the Democratic ads this fall, and they'll cite you as the great authority on why this man should be elected?
Well, let me just say this. If George W. Bush does get the nomination, he's going to have Orrin Hatch out there helping him to get elected. But I have to say this, If you want to beat Al Gore and Bill Bradley, you better go with experience that money can't buy. That's what Orrin Hatch has. And I'll tell you something. I can win this race, but I've got to be given a chance. And it's still too early to determine whether anybody is going to any one of us is going to win right now or not. You know, the polls show, the Shorenstein poll up at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government shows that 64% of the American people haven't even focused on this race yet.
Well, Senator, you say that if you are elected president, you will issue executive orders to take action. Give us one or two of the examples that you have in mind. For instance, the Kyoto Treaty.
Well, actually, the Kyoto, I would revoke the Kyoto Agreement because accords because that would cost the average family $30,000. It would cost them at least $1,500 to $3,000 in added fuel costs a year. It would cause our manufacturing system to go overseas, and it binds only the United States to these stringent accords that really there aren't the scientific proofs to sustain. But it's more than that. I would change the White House Code of Conduct to bring and restore values back into the White House. I would enforce the existing gun laws so that, which this administration is not doing, while upholding the Second Amendment rights of people to keep and bear arms. Get rid of the Kyoto Accords. I would, of course, reaffirm our sovereignty throughout the world. We've been eroding our sovereignty through this administration. I would do a lot to combat terrorism by setting up a multi-agency task force. And, of course, I would reform the procedures on clemency. And then there are at least 5 executive orders that this president has ordered that really fly in the face of the separation of powers doctrine of this country. I'd revoke those so fast. I would do all of this on the first day. It's all doable, and I think the American people would be very pleased with
Senator,
my approach to it.
You've said twice here you have had the experience that money can't buy, but people point to what they say is a conflict with Schering-Plough, the drug company. They say that when you've had trips on their jet, for instance, in 5 instances. After you've become a presidential candidate, you've done that. And they say you postponed a vote on whether to allow the generic cloning of the pill Claritin in the Judiciary Committee. That's the Schering-Plough pill.
Sam, you're bright enough and experienced enough to note that I'm the person who in 1984 passed the law that created the modern generic drug industry and has saved the American taxpayers $8 to $10 billion every year since 1984. I have juggled the pharmaceutical companies, the generic companies, the biotech companies. Everybody says I've done it fairly. And I think it's kind of a phony argument when you know that under the rules, I don't have Air Force 2 to fly around in, nor can I afford to buy my own plane like Governor Bush. And John McCain and everybody else, under the rules, can pay first-class rates and use private planes so we can meet our schedules. That's an ethical rule that's been decided, and I abide by it. I think it's kind of a cheap shot to hit me on that when everybody knows that I've brought all 3 of those major industries together and did it in what is called by Democrats the most important piece of consumer legislation in the last 25 to 50 years.
Wouldn't it, I understand you've abided by the rules. There's no question.
You're darn right I have. And I'll tell you, Sam, I'll always abide by the rules.
Wouldn't it be better just to avoid the conflict by not getting on a jet of a company that has business before your committee?
Not if it means missing votes that are critical to my state and to this country. Not if it means wrecking your health. No, it's perfectly valid to use private planes. And look, I've never been accused in my whole 23 years of violating ethics rules and of not doing what's right. Everybody knows that I've got a reputation for integrity, honesty, and decency. You know, I don't hear you saying this about John McCain, who's used private planes of all kinds of companies that appear before his committee. There's nothing, I don't find any fault with that because the rules say you can do it. And to presume that somebody is not doing right because they abide by the rules and they're trying to make the schedules and they are under a lot of pressure and they do make the votes, which I've done. I have a 98% voting record this year. I think kind of is off the wall.
You've made your defense, Senator, and I assure you when John McCain comes on our program next, we'll ask him about the same question. Thank you for being with us today.
Well, I don't want you to do that either. I want you to be fair to him. I want you to be fairer to him than you've been to me, Sam.
Senator, it's always a pleasure having you, and I hope you'll come back.
Nice to be with you.
When we come back, candidate Alan Keyes, and later, candidate Gary Bauer.
I had congestive heart failure, and everything that could go wrong did.
There are 3.5 million Americans with congestive heart failure.
It's so important for my son to have a grandfather.
It's a progressive disease, and it will ultimately result in death. We've actually developed a new medicine that can remove the death sentence from these patients.
I start feeling better.
I think we're going to see an explosion of new medicines that could treat diseases that before we couldn't treat.
So instead of paying a separate commission every time you trade, you'd pay an annual fee, trade all you want.
All I want?
Yeah, virtually unlimited.
Really?
Remember the financial plan we're working from here, Dad. The point is long-term capital appreciation.
I know.
You just don't want you sitting by the computer all day buying and selling stocks.
Yeah. Show me how I log on to your research.
Oh, that's easy. Yeah, investing is serious business, Dad.
I promise I'll do my homework, okay?
Alex, why so blue?
Everything up here is so colorless.
We need color. They need it more down there. See? Keep it in color, you make the point. It's results. That's why there's Xerox Color on the desktop.
It's also in the hall.
You can even get it at 40 pages a minute.
Guess they really do need it. But couldn't I just wear this?
Maybe on casual Fridays. Keep the conversation going. Share the knowledge. The Digital Document Company, Xerox.
The painter Degas often lit his subjects with a glow from a window. Renoir used dapple sunshine. Toulouse-Lautrec, the flicker of gas lamps. But when leading museums need to light a Degas, a Renoir, or a Lautrec, they choose revolutionary GE halogen bulbs. These bulbs make any room look its best, whether it's home to a Renoir or something equally priceless.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Howard Cosell, and this game is underway. How do you like that? I liked it. What a football player.
Lord, you can take me now. I've seen it all.
And that is the end of one of the great games.
30 years of making Monday nights special. This week, Denver, Jacksonville at 9/6 Pacific.
Tuesday.
7 starters from one team are about to get suspended from football for the rest of the season.
A scandal is about to break wide open.
What's going on?
Steroids.
Can we have it by tonight?
On the next plane to Ohio.
And it will hurt one of these people more than anyone can imagine. An all-new sports night followed by Once and Again, Tuesday starting at 9:30, 8:30 Central on ABC.
From Des Moines, Iowa, presidential candidate and former Ambassador Alan Keyes. Thanks so much for being with us, Mr. Keyes.
Glad to join you. Thank you.
Now, this question that we've been hearing about George W. Bush, does he have the experience, does he have the intellect to be president? Where do you come out on that?
Well, it's really not for me to judge. I think we have to fairly present to the American people the real priorities that face this country. My problem with G.W. Bush is that he doesn't want to face those priorities. We are in the midst of the greatest moral crisis this nation has ever known. Issues like abortion that assault the basic moral principles of our nation's life have to be addressed up front. We don't need people telling us that presenting those serious issues to America is being preoccupied with slouching toward Gomorrah. Any Republican who's not willing to address that moral crisis as the top priority is going to lose this election. We don't have an economic crisis. We don't have a big international crisis threatening this nation's future. But every American who's been through the last couple of years, seen the lack of integrity in our president, in our institutional response to his lying and lack of respect for his oath, we know that we're in the midst of a moral crisis. We see it in our schools. We see it in the dead bodies of our children in the hallways of those schools. We know that there's something fundamentally wrong. And folks like G.W. Bush who want to put that on the back burner, put a happy face on a situation like this, rather than address it in a way that strengthens this nation's ability to face the future, they're just not good enough. And that's not a matter of style, and it's not a matter of personality. It's a matter of deep substance, a lack of thoughtful understanding of the situation that this nation is in.
So when you say they're not good enough, does that mean that you don't support him, and you won't support him?
Well, I certainly don't support him. I'm running against him. What kind of a question is that? If I thought that he was, in fact, the best candidate for the Republican Party, I wouldn't be in this race. He is not. Neither is anyone else who, like him, is unwilling to put first things first. And the first thing we need to deal with right now is the fact that when you tell the people of this country, despite what the Constitution says, that we are to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, when we then turn our backs on those principles, on our dedication to the future, on our responsibility to our children and our grandchildren, and claim the right to kill our babies in the womb, ignore the first premise of our life, which is that our rights come from God, not from our mother's choice, we have poisoned the well of America's moral character, undermined our own moral confidence, and as a result put ourselves in a situation where more and more of our freedom, our control over our money, our schools, our businesses, our lives, is being handed off to government.
Mr. Keyes?
We are in a crisis of self-government, and we need somebody willing to address that.
Mr. Keyes, you fault George Bush for being insufficiently alarmed about the cultural crisis. Most of the indices of social health seem to be moving in the right direction in the last 5 years. Isn't there some reason for being optimistic?
Well, optimism ought to be based on our return to principle. And I think that if somebody has decided that they're an alcoholic, and for a few days they don't take a drink, that's not a sign that they've solved their problem if they haven't admitted that they have a problem. And that's the experience that we have had with such moral crises in individuals and in nations. So we can't take incidental facts as if we've addressed the issue, because we haven't. We are on the wrong road, and that wrong road has and is claiming lives tragically in this country. We need to turn around, and we can begin as a people turning around by returning to our allegiance to fundamental principles.
Tell me, Mr. Keyes, 3 things, specific policy things you would do to stop the cultural rot. Would you impose censorship? Would you make divorce more difficult? 3 things
Well,
President
you talk
Keyes
as
would
if
do.
the federal government controls all of that.
Well, you're
and it
running
does
to
not.
be head
It
thereof.
does not. What the federal government needs to do is correct its own misbehavior. We need a human life amendment in order to correct the damaging lie that the Supreme Court has planted in the soul of America, that we can have the right to do something that fundamentally destroys our claim to all rights. We need a human life amendment. I will fight for one. We need to return control of our schools to parents, respecting the principle of parental leadership that is the basis for handing on our moral traditions, restoring the alliance between home and school and faith that has been fundamental to shaping the character of our children. So we need to use every means we can to encourage a diminution in the government's control of education and letting the money we spend follow the choice of parents. We also need to get back control of the resources that allow individuals to make responsible decisions for their families.
Mr. Keyes,
the income tax system is the source of that irresponsibility, and we need to abolish the income tax.
Mr. Keyes, you stress getting responsibility back broadly in the hands of the American people. But if the country is in this cataclysmic moral crisis, aren't the American people part of the problem?
No. Actually, I think there are a lot of decent, fine people in this country. But the so-called experts, the pundits, the psycho-babble experts that are emphasized by the media, the entertainment industry, the news industry, everybody seems to have adopted the relativistic moral approach that undermines people's confidence in their own moral principles and decency. I think we need to act in such a way as to restore our respect for that and allow the decent impulses of the American people to move forward confidently to deal with their own affairs.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Keyes. Thanks so much for joining us from Iowa this morning.
Glad to do it.
When we come back, candidate Gary Bauer, and later our roundtable with ABC News analyst Bill Kristol and George
Stephanopoulos.
At Invesco, we know that the financial world isn't always as it seems. The big economic picture can always change quickly. And to manage a fund, Invesco knows you need to be on top of the changing picture and know how it might affect you right at home. To learn more about the opportunities for solid growth and income and the Invesco Growth and Income Fund, call your financial advisor or Invesco. You should know what Invesco knows.
Just a thought, that's what Einstein said. Just a view of the future 2 paces ahead. Think about me, think about you, all the good things a little good thinking can do. Just a world, rolling through space, down gravity's highway into your embrace. And I'm thinking about me, think about you, all the good things a little good thinking can do.
Every moment, every dream, every challenge, for every step you take in life, there's GE, a financial partner you can trust. Take advantage of our expertise in insurance and investments and get the innovation you've come to expect. So think of GE when you think of insurance and investments for every step you take.
This Week with Sam Donaldson and Cokie Roberts will continue in a moment. after this from our ABC stations.
This week, what kind of president would Bill Bradley make? Now's your chance to ask him live in our Times Square town meeting. Your voice counts on Good Morning America this week.
Right now, you can buy a twin-size mattress for $99, or this full for $99, or this queen for $99, or this king. Twin, full, queen, or king, you choose. Selected models are all just $99 each piece when you buy a complete set. If you need a new mattress for kids, for guests, for anybody, hurry to Sleep Country. Twin, full, queen, or king, you choose. They're all just $99.
Sleep Country, USA. Why buy a mattress anywhere else?
Special occasions call for special meals. Consider QFC's Golden Lion Style Beef Rib Roast. It's the preparation that makes it different. QFC's expert meat cutters actually hand trim each of these premium roasts. First separating the roast from the bone, then trimming excess fat and retying the roast back to the bone. This process saves you money and makes cooking and carving easy. The perfect holiday meal, available now at QFC. You know it's going to be good.
Relive the Measure 5 ballot battle, tonight at 6.
Joining us now, also from Des Moines, Iowa, where there'll be a debate tomorrow night, Gary Bauer. Mr. Bauer, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be with you all.
Are these debates accomplishing anything?
Well, I think they are, Sam. You know, I think that this series that we've had so far has raised serious questions about whether the frontrunner of the party has any sort of governing vision, whether it's on how to deal with China, basic reform of the tax code, or on the fundamental issue of how we make sure there's a place at the table for our unborn children. And I think the race is a lot more fluid now than it was before the debates began. I know why the governor was resistant to get involved. He's not doing very well.
Mr. Bauer, Mr. Hatch spoke about Governor Bush's alleged lack of experience. You talk about his lack of vision. Aren't we tiptoeing around the issue? The question that's being raised is George W. Bush dumb? Is he smart enough? Does he have the intellect? Let's get to this. Is he as smart as Eisenhower? You suppose you've read some history?
Look, I have read some history. George, I have no way of knowing.
Jerry Ford?
Look, let me get to what I think is the heart of the matter. I don't think it's the IQ of the various candidates. I think it's whether or not you have a vision of what the American experiment is all about. And I think on the fundamental issue of the sanctity of life, where I've challenged Governor Bush time and time again, the first debate in New Hampshire, I asked him a very fundamental question. Will your running mate be pro-life? Look, George, we'd never put a bigot as a running mate because we all know that that's fundamentally wrong. It's fundamentally wrong to deny 1.5 million children the right in the Declaration of Independence to life. Governor Bush refuses to answer that question. He won't answer the question about what kind of judges he'll put on the court. Mine will all be pro-life or they won't serve. And I want to confront him. I'll give him, instead of a pop quiz, I'll give him 36 hours advance notice here. I want to ask him tomorrow night a very fundamental question. Was Roe versus Wade wrongly decided or correctly decided? I think it's a blot on our national conscience, and I think any nominee of the party of Lincoln and Reagan ought to be willing to say that's bad law and it needs to be overturned.
Let me ask you about the judges. He says, Mr. Bush says, that his model judge is Anthony Scalia. Let me ask you, if you appointed judges that overturned Roe v. Wade, which, as you know, would simply reestablish abortion as a subject to be regulated by the states, can you think of any state where you're confident, any state, where you're confident that they would outlaw first trimester abortions, which are 87% of all abortions?
I believe that in many, many states, 95% of the abortions that are being performed now would stop. But, George, I guess I would say something even more fundamental. I think there is a right to life in the Declaration of Independence. I can't find the word abortion anywhere in the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution, but there are 36 words that define America in the Declaration. Those words brought the Berlin Wall down. Those words are why that Cuban mother tried to bring her son here. Those words say we're all created equal, endowed by God with certain rights, and the first right listed is the right to life. The party of Lincoln and Reagan cannot ignore those words. If we can't find our voice on this, the American people shouldn't trust us to be the governing party of the United States.
Suppose Mr. Bush is nominated, and suppose he picks a pro-choice running mate. What do you think the consequences would be at the convention and afterwards? And specifically, do you think you or someone else would mount an independent candidacy against that ticket?
Well, we know there's an independent candidacy out there, and that's Pat Buchanan. Look, I'm going to fight within the Republican Party. I'm not about to walk out of it and turn it over to Christy Todd Whitman or that wing of the party that I think at this point is a small minority in the party. I believe that if George Bush picks a running mate that thinks it's okay to continue to exploit women this way, that it's okay to continue to have 1.5 million children a year that don't even get to draw the first breath of life, that we will not make it back into the White House. It's as simple as that.
Mr. Bauer, how do you explain the fact that people on the religious right seem to be supporting Governor Bush? He's got the support of Ralph Reed, the former head of the Christian Coalition. Pat Robertson has been very supportive in his statements. They don't seem to have the same problem that you have.
Well, look, I mean, I can't get inside their heads. Pat Robertson has been no ally of mine in this race. He's playing sort of an inside game, and that's fine. But I think voters are just now beginning to pay attention, Cokie. In New Hampshire, the Bush candidacy has collapsed. I believe it's going to collapse soon here in Iowa because of these fundamental questions, whether it's China, where he's embraced most favored nation status for China, just like Al Gore, or whether it's taxes, where he's sort of dibbling around the edges instead of fundamental reform, or on this issue that I think defines our party. I think as more people understand the differences between us, his candidacy is going to be in deep, deep trouble. I believe it already is.
Mr. Bauer, thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you.
We'll be watching tomorrow night. When we come back, we'll talk Democratic politics and Republican politics. President Clinton, however, reacts after his wife criticizes his don't ask, don't tell policy. Topic A on our roundtable with Bill Kristol and George Stephanopoulos. In a moment.
Yeah, let me get this straight.
Yes.
Are you actually saying I don't have to pay you a separate commission every time I trade a stock? Exactly. I'd pay an annual fee instead. Right. Is anyone getting this?
We don't pay you a commission every time we trade. What's your motivation?
It's just like always, in your best interest.
Could you just explain it again?
Maybe what it is the fee is based on the value of our portfolios. So when we succeed, they succeed.
Well, you'll have to be patient with us. This is all very new.
Today, we step on the gas in a brand new vehicle with 0 miles on the clock and over 200 years of experience behind the wheel. ExxonMobil. They're hanging out on Hoyt Street in Brooklyn. They're killing time on the banks of the Mississippi. They're looking for something to do in the hollows of West Virginia. They're sitting right there in front of you on a stoop in your own hometown. They're the kids the future of the world depends on. But they need safe places to play, help with their schoolwork, or just somebody to look up to. That's why GE employees and retirees pledge to volunteer 1 million hours a year of their own time by the year 2000. A pledge that was surpassed a year ahead of schedule. So whether we find them in the alleys of the inner cities or the back lots of forgotten towns, one thing's for certain. Their future is in our hands, just as the world's future is in theirs. There's a new symbol on Wall Street. It was formed by combining energy, technology, and brain power. Not to mention over 200 years of experience. ExxonMobil.
Lindros and Pekka wear the sea with honor. They are the heartbeat of their teams. Flyers Sabres, Tuesday at 8, only on ESPN. This is The Game.
ABC tonight on an all-new Practice. You've never seen Bobby like this.
You want a piece of me, Eddie? You haven't got your knife, though. I wouldn't need my knife. I could pay you to play dead.
You've never seen a courtroom like this.
You're a joke. It is an outrage to let this trial continue.
You've never seen a practice like this. All new. ABC tonight, 10/9 Central.
Well, Hillary Clinton this week in New York made it very clear that she was separating herself from her husband on an important issue. Let's hear what she had to say about don't ask, don't tell with gays in the military.
I don't believe don't ask, don't tell has worked.
And I don't believe it is ultimately the policy that we should have in our military.
Joining us now, George Stephanopoulos, Bill Kristol. Now, the day or a couple of days later, the president seemed to agree with his wife. What's going on?
That's right, and they're also echoing what both Bill Bradley and Vice President Gore have said about Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It hasn't worked. But what none of them are doing is assigning blame. And you have to say that we've now had this policy for 5 years, and the military deliberately and in a lot of cases willfully has been insubordinate. They have not stopped harassing. I mean, it's not stopped the harassment. They have done investigations when they shouldn't. They have done the pursuit.
Well, you know, the president started out and he said, I agree with my wife, we should have an open policy. People should be able to serve in the military no matter what their proclivity. And he did say that in 1993, and he, in fact, as you remember, George, tried by sitting down at his desk and signing a piece of paper to change it. And the military commander said, you won't do that. No, you're not going to do that. And, of course, he had to back off. Why then all these years didn't the president try to work to make the policy better if it wasn't working? Why come up at this point and say, whoops, I agree with my wife, it's out of whack?
You're right. The first report came out of the Pentagon over 2 years ago. They finally issued the guidelines only a few months ago.
What is this? What's going on here?
Well, what's going on is we have a peculiar word here, and I don't know what it means. It hasn't worked. Surely the standard is what is best for our armed forces for their functioning, which is to administer violence effectively to win our wars. As a concept, but it never seems to creep into this discussion. The military is not an arena for social experimenting. It's a deadly serious business. And when people say, this hasn't worked, I would like to know if any of them are thinking about the military as in that function.
Well, the president presumably is thinking about the military. He's commander-in-chief, and Mrs. Clinton is perfectly entitled to take a position that a current policy should be changed.
And it's a position that Giuliani shares.
Right. They both don't think the current policy is the right policy. The president is the president, and it's a little odd for him to say, well, I don't think it's working either, and not try pretty hard to change it.
But there's no evidence that gays and lesbians haven't defended this country just as strongly as
and there's no evidence
others,
that allowing
George. I mean, what do you mean?
Right.
That to administer violence? Are you suggesting they can't administer violence?
You can be sure they've been in the military from the beginning. I think that's pretty safe to say.
That is true, and everyone in the military knows that.
Right.
But it does seem to me that the military is not being consulted on this, the military is not setting policy on this, and perhaps the military should.
Well, now, I'd like to, Hillary, though, at the same time, Hillary Clinton managed to seem to get on both sides of this issue, because at the same time that she said this, she announced that she's going to be marching in the St. Patrick's Day parade, which is, first of all, it's not till March, so why would you get into this right now in December? But it's got all these problems with the gay and lesbian Irish people.
Well, that's exactly right, because Democrats have been boycotting the parade for a long time because the St. Patrick's Parade has not allowed gays and lesbians. I think
that's not true, by the way. They allow gays and lesbians. They do not allow them to march with
openly
a banner,
as being gay and lesbian. That's what's the difference.
With a banner promoting their own agenda, piggybacked onto the parade.
Not promoting their own agenda, saying who they are and saying proudly who they are. I think what happened to Mrs. Clinton, though, she got caught trying to have it both ways. She said, as long as there are a lot of good people marching with me. And I think she thought that was a trap door that would allow her to push for having the gays in, but that wasn't the way it was heard.
I tell you, this New York politics is really quite interesting. The national political scene also, as we heard earlier from the candidates, Bauer, Keyes, and Hatch, heating up against George W. Bush. Another debate tomorrow night. Is he really in trouble here?
Oh, sure. Tomorrow night's debate is important. Look, a funny thing happened on the way to the coronation of George W. Bush, which is the voters decided to take a look at the campaign, and at least in New Hampshire, the state where the voters have paid the most attention, Bush is in some trouble. Something upwards of 40% of New Hampshire Republicans watched that first debate, the one that was shown on network television on WMUR in New Hampshire. I think something like that, about 30, 40, 50% of Iowa Republican caucus goers will watch tomorrow night's debate. Most Republicans have not seen the candidates yet. Certainly haven't seen them much. I think Bush has to do pretty well tomorrow night.
I think Bush is smart and has a good mind, but he's not schooled and lettered in all of the policy questions. And so they've given him a few things to say. He's thought about that, and the tape recorder runs. Problem is, we wanted our president, Bill Clinton has helped us think this because the guy's the smartest guy about policy, whether you agree with him or not, that we've had as president. We wanted our president to be able to think about it, not just do the first paragraph.
No, I'm not sure we do. Look, Ronald Reagan was one of the most successful presidents of this century, and he was very much this way in a debate. He had his core principles. He knew what they were. He often went back to the stump speech. You could see his mind sort of going back.
But Ronald Reagan could say, when Jimmy Carter made an uptight statement, There he goes again.
That
Now,
was a
when
scripted
Mr.
line
Bush
as well. It was just well delivered.
Well, when Mr. Bush was challenged by Steve Forbes the other night to say, you can call me Steve, because Bush had said Mr. Forbes. George Bush said, okay.
No.
Now, Ronald Reagan would have come back
But, you
with a
know,
clip
he's
that
always-
would have devastated Forbes.
He's got another problem. He can't be a nice guy anymore in these debates. People also want a fighter. And I think when someone like Orrin Hatch or Gary Bauer or Alan Keyes attacks him tomorrow night, he can't be above the fray anymore. He's got to punch back.
Is this serious? Is there real erosion from the Bush candidacy?
I think there's a little bit of erosion, but this is not about Bush. This is about McCain. At the end of the 20th century, the end of the millennium, we are seeing the third great love affair. Romeo and Juliet, Abelard and Eloise, John McCain and the national media. It's very stirring. The national media, that herd of independent minds, has decided to pick the candidate of the Conservative Party. And it's going to become not just the subtext, it's going to become the text of this campaign as to whether or not conservatives are going to sit still.
Well, we reporters have never been successful in being able to do that. Why do you think now, for the first time, if your thesis is accurate, which I think it's not, we'd be able to do it?
You won't be able to do it.
So you set up a straw man, and you've knocked us down.
No, I said you're going to try and you're going to fail.
Well, but the political establishment has tried to select the candidates of each party. I mean, Gore and Bush. And when you talk to people, governors, senators, money types, they're very offended. They're very offended that voters are taking a fresh look, both on the Democratic side and the Republican side.
You seem to find it sort of odd and, undemocratic that these governors elected by their people and representing their state parties are surrounding George Bush. We can go back to 1972 to the Democratic Convention where they threw out Mayor Daley and brought in Shirley MacLaine.
But no, I don't.
That's not the kind of party
the governors,
and all of his endorsements.
Well, that's right. Look, it was a healthy thing for the country. It wasn't good. McGovern would not have been a good president, but it was a healthy thing for the country to have a grassroots rebellion against the leadership of that party. And the question is whether this year, I agree,
It's
McCain.
taken them a very long time to come back from that grassroots rebellion. It might not be something the
But you're
Republicans
also
want to
seeing
go
something
through.
of a grassroots rebellion in the state of New Hampshire right now. And New Hampshire always does this. They always like to stick it in the eye of the establishment. The question is, can Bush recover from that? And will the governor stick by him after he gets beat? Because after all, they supported him because he thought he could be elected.
Not a vote has been cast. We were talking about the voters have decided. The voters have told pollsters something. And we haven't really seen a vote
We've seen this
cast
somewhere
yet.
before. Let's think. Eisenhower, remember the bland leading the bland, and what mirth people had about his syntax. Richard Nixon's robotic body language.
You know,
Gerald Ford was a student on Saturday Night Live.
I
just want to point out, all these people have one thing in common. They're Republicans.
Yeah, but you know, the state of New Hampshire, they voted for Henry Cabot Lodge rather than Barry Goldwater. They voted for Pat Buchanan rather than for the eventual winner of the... I mean, they can vote for whomever they choose, but thank goodness now Bill Clinton broke the jinx. He came in second and got the nomination. The state of New Hampshire will not control this nomination.
That is
in my
true,
view.
but Iowa will matter. And this is why tomorrow night's debate is important. It's the first time the focus turns back to Iowa. Everyone assumes Bush has that in his pocket. He'll win huge. Let's see whether Iowa starts to come into play as New Hampshire has.
Now, the other thing that's going to happen this week, in addition to the Iowa debate, is that Bradley and McCain are going to come together across party lines, shake hands as Clinton and Gingrich did in New Hampshire, or maybe not shake hands. And you reported this first last week. What's happened?
Well, it's a get out the vote
There they are, shaking hands in New Hampshire in 1995 on campaign finance. And
Bradley and McCain.
Right.
It's a get out the vote event. Because we saw this week that...
but isn't it the same vote? Don't they want the same voters?
What they want to do is get the independents, who are now the highest voting population in New Hampshire, but they want to get them to vote. In the past, they voted at lower levels than Democrats or Republicans. What they're banking on is that if independents come out in greater numbers, they'll both do better.
What about Bradley's health problem? Is there a health problem there?
I don't think so. An arrhythmic heart, apparently the whole world has it, and he was quite amusing about it. He says instead of it going thump, thump, it goes thump, thump.
Should he have told us about it before we discovered it? When
It's
he
a
went to the
minor
hospital?
ailment.
So many people have it that it's really hard
George
to
Bush,
get
the
behind
former
it.
president, had
What do you think of this joint appearance?
Well, let's see. I gather it's going to be balanced. You're going to have a Republican candidate in favor of campaign finance reform, and you'll have a Democratic candidate in favor of campaign finance reform. Is there a third view, perhaps that of the Supreme Court, which says most of this is unconstitutional? Will that be represented?
And they're wrong. I think the Supreme Court is wrong. Money is not speech.
Conservatives will attack McCain for this event. And look, the drama of the next month will be Bush rallying the conservatives against McCain. They will use this joint appearance with Bradley against McCain, and perhaps effectively. But right afterwards, I guess Gore and Bush, I hear, are going to have a joint event funded by soft money on K Street to contrast the McCain-Bradley campaign finance reform events.
They could have it at a restaurant.
Sure, co-hosted by Terry McAuliffe, Bill Clinton's fundraiser, and Haley Barbour, the former Republican
big Christmas
chairman.
Party. That'd be nice. All right. Well, we will. We'll be back with more next week, and Sam and I'll be back in a moment.
Michael?
Coming.
Hi. Oh, made a little extra.
I guess you heard Barbara was away.
Visiting Katie at college.
Yep.
First year, huh? How's that?
Made the dean's list.
Great. I know our Josh is only in 3rd grade, but I don't know how you guys did it. Put him through school and all?
We invested with T. Rowe Price.
Really?
Yeah, and they helped us figure out how much to put away. They've got this college planning kit.
On my way to my mom's anyway.
Hey, thanks.
T. Rowe Price, helping people invest with confidence for over 60 years.
Turning on the light, I was immediately aware of something different. It was the same room. She was the same woman. Yet somehow, incredibly, something had changed.
The Enrich bulb from GE. Its innovative glass filters out rays that dull colors. Blues look bluer, reds redder. Almost everything looks better.
Her blue eyes blazed. Her black hair burned. She turned to me. I turned to her and said,
That's some light bulb. The incredible Enrich bulb, only from GE.
See the world run. Run, world, run. Run. See Texaco run. Visualize, hypothesize, explore, and relentlessly search and find the energy the world needs to run. Run, world, run. Texaco, a world of energy.
Great Harvest Bread has over 100 stores connected across the country.
There's no other way to grow your business besides talking to other people.
Like thousands of businesses today, Great Harvest store owners use the internet and Microsoft software to share knowledge and make better decisions.
So now we can compare stores versus stores. You know, my suppliers know that I constantly look at prices. So they're less apt to raise prices because they know that I know what I know.
A nice place to come if you have a spare 5 minutes. Maybe even spend a lunch hour. And if you let your company get left behind by technology, it's a place where you can come and spend the whole day.
If you want something important done, ask a busy person. So we're asking you, become a mentor. Mentor a child and change his world and yours. How does it work? Call this number. Put children first.
Now here's what's coming up on ABC News.
Tomorrow on Good Morning America, buying shares of presidential candidates. That's right, just like in the stock market. George Stephanopoulos shows you how. On World News Tonight, more and more mentally ill people are walking the streets untreated. Why isn't more being done? And Sam and the CEO of Continental Airlines show you how to fly smarter and cheaper this holiday season. Log on to Sam Donaldson at abcnews.com.
Sam, you and Gordon Bethune,
Hey,
smarter and cheaper. How about getting off the ground there on time?
We'll talk
all
about
of that.
on-time issues. And it's 12:30 Eastern Time on your neighborhood little computer. So I hope you all watch.
I will be, definitely. But for us, that's all for this week. Until next week.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News.